Hello! In this section we are building a whole IoT system. The sensor side of the system is based for the Arduino modules with the C and C++ source code with the simple sensors, and we will also create a graphical user interface which in this exercise looks something like this. And that user interface server is running in Raspberry Pi. And also there is MQTT protocol between the Arduino and Raspberry Pi. Here's the block diagram of the system. Here we will have this Arduino side, which is acting as a intelligent sensor device, and then we will have this Raspberry Pi, which is working as MQTT broker client and web server side. And we could connect the Raspberry Pi to that our web server wherever inside the internet. So if we start the browser, and give the Raspberry's IP address, we could see our system in graphical form. And here's the message protocol between the Arduino and Raspberry. There is MQTT protocol, which means from here to here. And for the graphical user UI, we will use this HTML, which goes through these here through internet. And we will have also the small terminal in Raspberry Pi that we could configure and boot up the system. This is not included if you don't want this, but it helps to make this exercise. This presentation content of the system introduction we'll go first briefly through the system, then we'll go through that how this Arduino sensor side is working. How is the code working, and how to connect these sensors to our system. Third section is the MQTT side, which is running in the Raspberry Pi, and fourth part is the graphical user interface, which is based for HTML and JavaScript. And in the last part of this section there are exercises that you could go through by yourself or with your team. You will get the reference code for this system, but if you would like to understand in the deep level of these items that we will go through here, it is recommended that you should be able to have some basics of the microcontrollers, and these are the but if you have done these exercises earlier in this course, you are familiar with the Arduino. And you should also have some experience how to use Raspberry Pi, because we are not going through this basic installation things or some other. So it is assumed that you know how the Raspberry Pi is working, and you have been used that for at least for a little, which means that, and the Raspberry Pi main code is run in Python, so you should be some basic knowledge of how to make the Python coding. And the graphical UI is based for HTML, so to understand that side it is needed to know some basic information of this HTML. And also the functionality of the graphical user interface is done in JavaScript, so you should be aware about how JavaScript is working. You could use some of these reference solutions, so you could trust for that and do nothing with that side. But of course it's recommended that you could, if you would like to understand the whole system, you have to go through all of these items here. And in the tool side, what is needed, you are using Arduino SDK, but that needs that in here we will need this Ethernet and MQTT libraries to be installed to SDK, and also we will use that one infrared sensor, this MLX 90 and so on. So you will need that library. You could get these libraries through internet, so it's no problem to get this, to install these libraries, but you have to do this beforehand. And for the Raspberry side, you need a Mosquito server installed in Raspberry and Flask server also installed there. And for this Python MQTT libraries, these are that our Python program is using these libraries. Here is again a picture of our system, and here's the same system with the block diagram pictures. If we first look this sensor side, the Arduino side, we will have this, the Arduino and the sensors are working as an MQTT client. It means that we will have, in this example, I was using the Arduino Nano, and that Nano is working with the input-output devices, sensors, and that will have a small LCD display and the Ethernet card, which will connect our Arduino to Ethernet or Internet world. And what is here in the sensor side? There's a voltage meter. We are using the Arduino's AD converter to act as a voltmeter, and then there's this infrared sensor connected to Arduino to measuring the temperature. And the output, for the output device, we are using one LED. So the LED is our output device, and we could control the brightness of the LED. And the messaging between the Arduino and Raspberry is a MQTT protocol. And the MQTT protocol server is we are using, for that we are using the Mosquito server, which is running in the Raspberry. And there are also a web server that is responsible for creating the UI or responding to browsers UI queries, and our Python program is running also in the Raspberry Pi. And here is our graphical user interface. It means that it's only browser. You give the browser the Raspberry's IP address, and then you can start using our system. And the protocol between the web server and a browser is HTML. And then there's also small terminal that you could use with in Raspberry. It helps you. It helps you to use this Raspberry. Of course, you could also use PuTTY program from PC. Then you don't need this terminal. Now, if we go more detail part of this block diagram, if we first look our user interface, it looks like this. There's one meter which is measuring the temperature. Also the same temperature number is here in numbers, and here is the voltage that we are measuring. And for the LED, there are two buttons, LED on, LED off, and also we could control the brightness of the LED. It's in here, it's the full power, full off, and here we could, now it's about 50%. The brightness of the LED is about 50%. There's a slider bar that we could control the brightness of the LED. And this interface, user interface is based for HTML, and the functionality is done with the JavaScript. And the MQTT and the web server is utilized in the Raspberry Pi. So there are one process is the Mosquito server that is running, and then there's this web server running in our application program, and there are these two processes are taking care of our MQTT functionality and creating our user interface. And for the terminal window that is connected to Raspberry, we could use the monitoring about that our software is running. Here's the monitoring information that is coming from our software. It tells us that something is happening, the servers are running and they are working. This is not in the final solution, or if you don't have a monitor, you could also run without this, or use Puttu instead of real monitor. Here's our sensor, MQTT client side. Here is the voltmeter, infrared sensor, and the LED control system. So the voltage meter is, we are using the Arduino's AD converter for measuring the voltage, and here we are simulating the voltage with this potentiometer. It simply gives from 0 to 5 volt to Arduino, so we could control by turning this knob. We can change the voltage that we will give to Arduino. If you have your own sensor which is giving output voltage, whatever measured value, you could replace this potentiometer with that your own sensor. The other sensor that we will have here is that temperature sensor. This is it's based for infrared technology, so you don't have to touch the sensor. It's contactless temperature sensor. It's here. And for the output device, we will have one LED here, and what we do is that we are controlling the brightness of the LED. Here's also a small LCD display, so we are able to monitoring that our local system is working. In here we have been printing temperature here and voltage here, and this gives that what is the brightness level of the LED. This is the main processor here, the Arduino Nano. You could use also some other Arduino boards, doesn't matter, because basically the same software is running most of those boards. And here's our Ethernet card. So this is Ethernet wired Ethernet that we are using to transfer the measured value from our sensor block. Here's the total picture of our trial board, but here are regulators for regulating this 5 volts voltage to our system, but probably you might have your own system, so you don't have to care about this other side. It's enough that you will get your Arduino trial board working.